This morning on Inside Kansas Politics.
The post office basically disenfranchised those voters.
Claims of a mail-in ballot fiasco sparking a heated debate ahead of the general election.
This is not a Bed Bath & Beyond coupon. This is a person's ballot that was legally cast to vote.
With thousands of Kansans expected to vote by mail, is it the best option?
Yes, there's a risk.
He's a state official, and I'm a little concerned about voters mishearing him and thinking that they're not allowed to vote by mail.
Why Kansas's top election official is sending a warning to USPS. From the Kansas State Capitol, this is Inside Kansas Politics. All right, this morning we're going one-on-one with the man himself, Kansas Secretary of State Scott Schwab. You're taking a look inside Kansas politics. Welcome in. I'm Rebekah Chung. It all started with a letter to the Postal Service. Secretary Schwab is joining me now. And Secretary, always great to have you on.
Honored to be here. Thank you so much.
So we wanted to talk first about the letter that you sent last month to the Postmaster General demanding answers. So you called for an explanation for the mishandling of legally cast ballots. Some other points here, explanation of their policy to make sure all ballots are postmarked and delivered on time. And then you're also asking them to fix this issue. In response, USPS then sends a letter basically asking for proof of the ballots you claim were mishandled. You said about 1,000. When you initially got a response back from USPS, you called it dismissive, right? Tell me a little bit about the communications you've had with the agency.
First off, they said, well, you know, Douglas County is a perfect example. Jamie Shue made sure he went to that local post office to make sure the envelopes for the ballots met specs. Multiple emails said, yes, we're good to go. Then they don't show up. Some have postmarks, some don't. And they said, well, show us the envelopes. Well, okay, we showed you the envelopes. Oh yeah, well, these aren't specs. Well, you emailed us before we ordered them saying they were specs. And now you're saying they're not. And why does that ballot get postmarked, but this one doesn't? And it's like they never have problems postmarking your tax return, but several people votes that were legally cast didn't get counted because the post office is not doing their job.
Gotcha. Now let's also get into those extraordinary measures, right, that they said they'll be taking for the general election. This is what they sent us in an email, some outlines here of the changes that they include. We have the establishing a dedicated line for ballot postmarks and drive-through ballot drop options changed. These will be staffed through Election Day. They also say they will make additional deliveries and collections to make sure ballots are delivered on time. So early collections will be run on November 2nd, 4th, and 5th, with special runs to Board of Elections on those days. And the last day that boards of elections will accept ballots as timely in states that accept ballot mail after Election Day. So also they say postmasters will arrange after-hours handoffs with boards of elections and use the express mail network for completed ballots entered close to the election. And then also local carriers will check the mailboxes of every home for outgoing mail starting October 21st. That'll come up soon, later this month.
Wait a minute. They're going to start.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you be doing that every day right now?
You know, I'm reading off what they said us.
Come on.
I'm just going through the list. And then the one other thing that they mentioned, facilities will use special sorting now to hold out ballot mail early in the process to expedite delivery to boards of election. Ballots for non-local destinations will be expedited using priority mail express if needed. So are these enough, do you think, to ensure that the ballot is postmarked, delivered on time? Is that enough for you?
Half that stuff is stuff they should be doing anyway. And two, they didn't do it in the primary. And we had multiple conversations to make sure they stepped it up, and they didn't. And there was an OIG report saying that they were not even following their own guidelines. And this is what makes me nervous, is where's the accountability? That right now is just a document. How are you enforcing? Because the OIG report said you're not even following your own guidelines right now. And the Kansas City one was one of the worst in the country. And so, okay, explain to me, it's great that that's what you want to do. How are you going to do it, and where's the accountability? That's what we need to know as election officials, and we have not gotten that.
You need to wait to see it happen.
No,
right?
That's going to be too late.
Oh, gotcha.
They need to show it now, because ballots go out the 16th. And so they need to say how they've implemented this already. It's October.
What would you like to hear from them?
Specifics, like he says, treat it special. What does that mean? You know, are you going to postmark every ballot? And how are you going to make sure that actually gets done? You know, as an election official, if I came in and said, you know, we're going to brag about, hey, 99.2% of the ballots got counted, the other two we just didn't count, I'd get sued.
Yeah.
We have to count every ballot. that's legally cast, and they aren't helping.
Right.
But yet, even on their website, it says every ballot gets counted. No, it doesn't, because you're not delivering. And on their website, they said every ballot gets a postmark, and then in their document, they say it don't. We need consistency, and we need them to follow through on what they say they're going to do, because they haven't done it.
Okay. We'll continue more of our talk after the break with the Kansas Secretary of State. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics. Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Rebekah Chung. Kansas Secretary of State Scott Schwab is talking mail-in ballots ahead of the general election. The battle with USPS taking a new turn. Secretary Schwab, you said the Pony Express is faster than, I love that quote, it's faster than voting by mail.
Yeah.
It's funny to me, advising people to steer toward early in-person voting, right? But some political experts say, this kind of rhetoric may also fuel the conversation that limits those voting options. People may be mistaking what they're hearing from you. So what are your thoughts on that? And are you opposed to mail-in voting?
No, I'm not. I'm just opposed to the post office. Advanced mail ballot, there's several people that is their best option. And our whole administration, we didn't want to make drastic changes. There's 3 ways to vote. You can vote by mail, you can vote in person early, or you can vote in person on election day. But you don't have to put it in the mail. You can put it at a drop box. You can put it, family members, if they sign the envelope, they can turn it in for you. You can put it at any early voting site, any polling place in your county on election day. But if you put it in the post office, it may not show up, and then your vote doesn't get counted. And, these votes are very important in an election year, not just for president, but all the way down to the legislature. And, we had a race that was determined by 22 votes in Leavenworth County, I believe. And they had over 100 ballots not counted because they didn't postmark them. That affects the will of the people, and that's what's the biggest offense.
So what you're saying is don't not go vote by mail. Just make sure you're just wanting
Don't trust the post office.
Right. You're just saying, so by that you're
what
saying,
I would say is don't ever give your ballot to the federal government.
Okay.
So keep it in the county, because almost all mail in Kansas leaves the state before it comes back in. And so in liberal Kansas, I think it goes to Lubbock, Texas, to Kansas City, back to show up at the courthouse across the street from the post office. It doesn't make sense.
So you should mail in vote if you have to.
If you have to. I've got a friend, and he lives in a rural area. He had a stroke. He's wheelchair bound. That's his only option. He can't drive. I get it. But also he can call. He has someone he called. I finally told him, I said, just call somebody to come get your ballot and deliver it for you. You can deliver up to 5 legally. Or maybe it's 10. It may be 10 that he can do.
So you would prefer that?
Much better. I would trust my ballot with somebody I know, like a family or a caregiver, than the postal worker that, they're supposed to be checking the mailbox to see if they're in there, or they're going to start. I mean, you should be doing that every day, whether it's an election year or not.
It almost sounds anti-mail-in voting. I'm not going to lie.
I know. It's not. I mean, those ballots are fine. Drop it in the drop box. If you're going to be gone and you want to get it in before advance in-person voting starts, just go drop it off at a county drop box. They're very secure. They're more secure than the blue drop box that they have outside the post office, I will say. And so that's just a better option. I understand, folks, that is their best choice. But if you can avoid the USPS, I would. But the ballot, everything else, just make sure it gets to the county offices or the polling places.
Okay, so even if mail-in voting, probably checking in on the status of your ballot.
Yes, and if you go to our website, which I'm going to make sure I get it right, it's votekansas.gov, you can track your ballot. If you've applied for an advance mail ballot, you can see if they've got your application, if your ballot's been sent, and if your ballot's been received. And if it's getting close to Halloween and it hasn't been received, you need to call your county.
Okay. Now, this is an interesting point that was raised to me. There are some Republicans that argue that this issue could potentially be cause to reignite the conversation surrounding legislation for mail-in ballots. So they say getting rid of the 3-day grace period would also get rid of the postmark requirement. For example, the last time they tried to do this, they had a plan that would have added extra days for mail-in voting before Election Day to compensate for any days lost to accept ballots after the election. Would you support this alternative to address this issue being raised with the Postal Service?
No, because once you start moving deadlines, you change the whole election process. And again, we campaigned on no drastic changes. Now, whether it should be 3 days, 4 days, no days, that's a policy decision by the legislature. But do not change the deadlines of when the voter registration deadline is, when mail ballots go out, all that stuff, because that has back-end effects throughout the year that really puts more strain. And not every county is like Shawnee County, where you got Andy Howell here, does a great job, and he just does elections. A lot of county clerks, they put multiple duty and they don't have much staff. So if the legislature starts messing with deadlines, it just puts more strain on counties.
All right. Thank you so much. This isn't the only issue making headlines. The Secretary of State is weighing in on an attempt to hijack a Kansas political party, plus suspicious packages sent to election officials across the country and in Kansas. A recap of the fallout. We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics. Our next topic of discussion, a political party hijacking that raised some eyebrows earlier this year. We spoke with Chris Van Meeteren. He's doubling down on his claim to the No Labels Kansas Party. That's even though the state's top leaders say it's not valid. Here's a breakdown of what led up to this point. We brought you this story back in June.
We'll begin by electing a convention chair.
Chris Van Meeteren, a GOP strategist, sending us these papers that he filed with the Secretary of State's office, staking his claim to No Labels Kansas. This came after the original chair didn't file paperwork for nominees in time for this year's elections. Van Meeteren even went as far as holding a nominating convention where he was elected chairman. Take a listen.
And I am placing my own name in nomination. And I'm asking if there are any other nominations.
The move came as the original chair, Glenda Reynolds, who the Secretary of State's office told us was the chair they had on record, was reportedly in hospice. The National No Labels Party also accused Van Meeteren of trying to manipulate the election. At the time, Van Meeteren tried to nominate his wife, who was running for a seat in the Kansas legislature, to appear on the general election ballot, and also adding another name to the list, a longtime Democratic senator in Lawrence, who didn't even know she was being nominated. We received this statement from the Secretary of State's office about their determination on his filings. They say, quote, Mr. Van Meeteren's filing is not valid. Mr. Van Meeteren does not and has never had any association with the No Labels Kansas political party. His corporation, although similarly named, is a separate organization. State laws that govern the formation of political parties are not the same as those which establish political action committees, PACs. All right, Secretary Schwab, Van Meeteren wants to know why you're saying what you're saying. You say the laws governing political parties and PACs are different. What makes his filing a PAC? And he's also citing in that letter that he sent us that other parties that have Inc. or incorporated are still considered political parties, right? So what led up to this particular determination for his filing?
So his filing, to become a minor political party like No Labels, like the Libertarian Party, you have to have a certain number of signatures on a petition of certified voters, which according to statute, it's 2% of those who cast a ballot in the previous gubernatorial election, which is about 20,000 signatures. So the Republican and Democrat Party are major parties. That's a completely different process. He's trying to be a minor party, but he's doing it without getting the required signatures. The actual No Labels Party did get those signatures, and that's why we recognize them as a party. And what we do is they give us just this unload a ton of signatures at our office. We give them to the counties, and they verify that each of those signatures belongs to a registered voter. Once we get 20,000, we stop counting, and we recognize them as a party. And he originally said, well, he filed as a nonprofit. Well, a nonprofit isn't a political party anymore, like Royals Charities is not a political party. And then he just filed in the paperwork, says, this is me, this is my treasurer, we're a party. Well, you got to have 20,000 signatures. And he didn't have them.
What about a PAC? Like, what would make it a PAC?
You can file as a PAC, and then that's statute that is regulated through ethics. You file it with our office, and then we hand it off to the Kansas Board of Ethics, and they then regulate them and make sure you're doing your reports for money. So he can give, if he wants to create a PAC and raise money and give it to candidates, you can do that. But you know, like the governor has her PAC. She can't register clients to be on the ballot, or candidates rather. The candidate files and says, I want to run for this party and for this position. And, you know, if they meet the statutory regulations in the Constitution of being a legal elector, then your name's on the ballot. And he just came in and filed it in and said, these are my candidates. The candidates did not file. Now, as a minor party, you can say these are nominees, but according to statute, if you are nominated by two parties, that person has to choose which one they want for the general anyway. So what he was trying to do was try to get a third party in there by registering somebody as two different parties. and it still wouldn't work. And it's one of those things, just go talk to an attorney. You know, there's not a ton of election attorneys out there, but there's enough that you can get some guidance if this is what you're trying to do. But to be a party, you got to get the signatures.
All right. Now, moving on, let's also talk about the recent scare at your office downtown. Another suspicious package was sent last month, causing a frenzy, really. Several law enforcement agencies responded. No harmful material was detected, but this is the second time we've seen something like this and sent out to election officials, not just here, but in other states. So give me a rundown of what happened in the most recent situation and what was it like for you that day?
First off, law enforcement took really good care of us, and there was no pandemonium, there was no panic. And like you said, it's not the first time, so we kind of know how to respond. Capitol Police, Go Lightly, who works with Capitol Police in our office, you know, it's not just my office, but I share a building with the Attorney General. They sometimes get suspicious packages, and then, I mean, not nationwide, it happens. So we have protocols to go through this, and we'll do some modifications because coming into election season, sometimes this stuff can continue even until the next president's sworn in. So they did a great job. Outside of that, I can't say a whole lot because it's under investigation, and they're not going to give me information until they have a conclusion of who or what. But we were told it was a non-harmful substance. So.
Did you ever see the package yourself?
No, I did not.
Oh, gotcha.
No. So all my mail is pre-opened and scanned, and so it never got to me, and it never really got to staff.
We are inching closer and closer to the general election. What you need to know leading up to November. We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics. Leading up to the election, there's a lot to keep tabs on. That includes some very important upcoming dates. Secretary Schwab, we're coming up on one of those soon, October 15th.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right? Voter registration deadline.
Mm-hmm.
We always like to, and I appreciate the question because we can never talk about this enough. If you've had a name change due to divorce or marriage or just change your name, if you've moved, re-register to vote. If you've had, you know, like my mother-in-law, she had a stroke, her signature has changed. Go ahead and re-register to vote. And also, if you're going to be 18, after October 15th, but before the election, go ahead and register to vote so you get a chance to participate, because that first election, it's pretty neat, especially, you know, in the bigger counties. They applaud those young people in when they vote. First-time voter, you know, and it's really just American civility at its best. And so we always want to make sure folks get that registration in by the 15th. You can go to votekansas.gov and find out your local county offices, where your polling places are, where drop boxes are. All that information's there to make sure that you have what you need. Because we always say, make a plan. Don't decide on Tuesday, October 5th, okay, how am I going to vote? No going into close to Halloween if you want to vote by a mail ballot, or if you want to vote early in person, or know where those places are. Have a plan so you're not scrambling at the last minute.
All right. And some of the other dates we have, October 16th, it seems, first day of advance voting, right?
In person.
In person. October 29th, last day to apply for advance voting.
Correct, which is important. And again, it's going to be cutting it close, please. Is what I'm like, yeah, that's the statutory deadline, but that's not the best idea. And then also, we tell folks, you know, you can track that ballot on our website to make sure they get it. If they don't get it, call. If you feel like they didn't get it, you can vote in person on election day, and if they get the ballot, the first one that'll count. If not, you'll get a provisional ballot, and they'll give you a chance to make sure that one gets counted in case the mail ballot doesn't show up. So our local folks do a really good job to do what they can to accommodate voters.
All right, and November 4th, we have in-person advance voting ends at 12 p.m.?
Correct, and because the election day is the next day, so they have to start redeploying equipment to various polling places across the state.
Okay, now what are some things that people should keep in mind if they're heading to the polls?
Well, know where you're going and how you're going to get there. If you're non-ambulatory, or if you just don't have a car, find out how you're going to get there and know where you're going. If you have access to the internet, obviously I'm going to continue to pound that website, votekansas.gov, and let folks know if it doesn't say .gov, it didn't come from us, so be cautious with it. And the information you give them. And the other thing is just try to decide early who you're going to vote for. You have till election day, but if you pretty much know who all you're going to vote for, just get it done. Just go ahead, vote, get that ballot counted, get it in to the local office, or vote in person. But I always tell folks, voting in person is the most secure way to get your ballot counted, because you're the one actually putting it in the tabulator. However, I know some people have to do the mail ballot thing. Please use a county drop box, because again, we've had the conversation earlier, the U.S. Postal Service, there are just so many gaps right now, and I'm worried about the Postal Service. Now, And again, I'm not trying to make it sound like, let's eliminate the mail ballot piece because it's too important to the election system. But again, make sure you have a plan to make sure that ballot gets there. If you have to mail it, call the county office and ask them if they got it.
Okay. When it comes to poll workers, what are some things to keep in mind? I think we've had those talks before.
We have, and Kansas is one of the states you could be as young as 16. So again, push the website, votekansas.gov, and you can find your local office and apply to be a poll worker. If you're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, you grew up in the digital age, and so much technology is used to secure the election. It's intuitive for our younger people. Sometimes it's nice to work with a grandparent or a parent at a polling place. Now you're making memories. And also, if you're trying to apply to a qualified admissions university, or if you're trying to get into one of the military academies, it looks really good because it's not a political activity. It's a digital age, and so much technology is used to secure the election. It's intuitive for our younger people. Sometimes it's nice to work with a grandparent or a parent at a polling place. Now you're making memories. And I'll also let young people know it looks great on resumes for scholarships, or if you're trying to apply to a qualified admissions university, or if you're trying to get into one of the military academies, it looks really good because it's not a political activity. It's a civic activity. And that kind of separates you apart from other candidates. So we can never speak enough about poll workers. Also, if you're a high school student, this November, you get the day off school, you get paid, and you get credit. I mean, what else do I got to do to get 16, 17, 18-year-olds to be poll workers, right? We're paying you to not go to school.
Yeah.
One day.
All right, Secretary Schwab, thank you so much. And that was your look inside Kansas politics. If you want to keep up to date on all things Kansas politics, then follow us on social media. Follow us on X at NKS Politics, and on Facebook. Just search Inside Kansas Politics. We'll also post the full video on YouTube. Just search KSNT News and check ksnt.com/inside-kansas-politics for past episodes. If you have a story you want Kansas state legislators to hear or topics you think we should cover, let us know. We'll see you right here, same time, same place. Have a good day.